All right, let's call this meeting to order. Time 7:06. The Bylaws and Procedures Committee of the Studio City Neighborhood Council. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of the February minutes. If there's no objection, they are so approved. Chair update. From our last meeting in February, we had two amendments, actually three amendments to our operating procedures, and they were all passed by the board. There was one amendment to the bylaws that was passed regarding the conflict of interest. That was submitted to Dunn. Dunn gave approval on July 1st, so that's now part of our bylaws. Also, I touched base with Lorenzo about amendments to the bylaws. He said, as of right now, we cannot amend the bylaws until they open it up again. That was his statement. So tonight, we're really focusing on amending the operating procedures because apparently we cannot amend the bylaws at this time. That's it for the chair update. Moving on to public comments and possible clarification of non-agenda items within the committee's jurisdiction. 1 minute per speaker, 10 minutes max per each agenda item. If you're accessing the meeting by phone, please use *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Do we have any public comments? Looks like we have two here. Go Puppet, go ahead.
Yes, and thank you for muting me just as I was really getting to utter my statement. Yeah, I noticed that. Yes. So, what do we have? You can't amend your bylaws. Randall Fried Chicken told you. Remember? And you didn't listen to him. Yes, before he was taken over in the junta. The Brendan Marino Scott junta, yes. Even though the military dictatorship has been successful, you are still responsible for amending the bylaws. And you must come up with a solution. And this is not a solution. This is an excuse for more malfeasance. And of course, I tried to raise my virtual hoof, but I'll take the hand. And about the minutes, yes. And again, what is it that you can't do? You knew all along how to do those amendments to the bylaws.
That's time. Thank you, Mr. Go Puppet. Barry, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you actually can make amendments to your heart's content all that you want. You just can't submit them for approval at present. So there's nothing keeping you from updating it and having it ready to go the day you can submit. Why wait till then? Then it's going to take another cycle of meetings to get it ready to go. So I say do it now. Also, I find it interesting since the bylaws and operating procedures were amended, now we're making all those mays that were turned from shalls to mays. Now we're going to make them shalls again, you know? The madness continues. Thanks.
Thank you. Brandon, go ahead.
I don't know if this is apropos for this committee, but the recent addition of somebody to the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, an appointment of somebody who just came out of the blue. I know they worked at the mayor's office as an aide, I think, and then I believe at the city attorney's office as, I don't know, an assistant. But that email you sent out, that really got me thinking about what Garcetti's doing in his final few months. I don't know if that is something that could be brought. I think you guys can only speak about the operating procedures and bylaws. I maybe that's government affairs. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's something that should be discussed.
Thank you, Brandon. Any other hands from the public? Any board comment? Just a brief comment on the new Dunn appointee. I think that we should comment on her appointment. I forget her name, but it's probably under, I would say maybe government affairs will be the best fit for that. As a Dunn appointee, it wouldn't go under sustainability or public safety or things like that. So it seems like the logical place for it to be. I'll go ahead and forward Barry the email I had sent to you, and perhaps you can take a look at it and we can move forward with that. All right, so comments by other public officials and or staff. Agenda item number 5, I don't see anyone here. So we will continue forward. Item number 6, discussion and possible motion regarding Article 1, Section 1C of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, operating procedures pertaining to board member email addresses. Let me go ahead and see if I can screen share this. All right then. So agenda item 6. What it would basically, the draft motion, the board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves amending Article 1, Governing Board, Section 1, Duties and Powers, Paragraph 6, as follows. Section 1, Duties and Powers. Paragraph C, each board member shall use a SCNC email address for all business of the SCNC. That would be the proposed amendment to that particular operating procedure. Let me stop sharing. And let's go to public comment.
Oh, you'll probably need a second on that motion.
Oh, yes. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Yes, yes.
Second by Richard. Go Puppet, go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Yes. And we'd like to know who the new board member lady is. Yes, that's going to be interesting. Imagine somebody from the cover-up unit. What's that? Oh, the city attorney's office. Yeah. And I'm against this. I like it when you use your own personal email for your business here. That way, when I do my CPRE request, I get all of your emails, everything. And it reveals a lot of things, like where you shop, who you do business with, what developers you're having pretty little lunches with in Malibu at Moon Shadows. Things like that. Yes, and I know Jeff wants to stop that, but you know how much fun we have with those CPRE requests.
Time.
Thank you, Go Puppet. Barry, go ahead.
I unmuted.
Barry, go ahead and unmute.
Oh, like I said before, you're changing it back to what it was Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Barry. Any board comment? Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. I think one of the stakeholders actually made a good point about personal email addresses for SCNC business. And I think right now, every board member is actually using the SCNC email address, which is a good thing. There were some issues in the past where a board member was attempted to be censured because the complaint was the public couldn't tell when he was sending an email out from his personal or speaking as a person or speaking as a board member. And I think this is kind of a no-brainer. We really should be using the SCNC email for SCNC business, so there's no confusion. So I totally support this, and hopefully the rest of the committee and board will as well.
Let's see, Peter, you have your hand up. We skipped over you. Since there aren't that many here tonight, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment again. Go ahead.
Board members reply to the public, they should, whenever possible, reply using a committee email address. That way the public will, you can slide a new committee member in there at any time and the public still is using the same email address rather than having all of your SCNC email addresses facing the public. Obviously, there's times when that needs to be, but I think a generic land use at or public affairs at email address might be best to use. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Looks like we have Go Puppet up for another round here. Go ahead, Go Puppet.
Yes. And of course, the person referred to is the late, great Richard Adams. Yes. Yes, one of Scott's nemesis. And Lisa Karjakian's favorite board member of all time. Yes, he was communicating with you. And when you communicate with your personal email, you give Goat Puppet the privilege of learning more about you. Why you're so angry. Why you have such issues. Why you can't use the correct email. If you don't know how to use an email in this day and age, you're not a very smart human. And Goat Puppet likes that kind of board member. It's an entertaining board member. That makes sense. Yeah, so let's go back to the old way and let us choose which email you want to use. I don't use email. I use goat sounds. Like that. See, that's the way I communicate.
That's time.
Thank you, Go Puppet. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I know it's difficult following up a farm animal, but I'll ask this question anyways. You're an attorney. What's the difference between must and shall? It's one. I know words can make a big difference. Sometimes a whole case hinges on one word, but is must more definitive than shall? Is it more black and white? What are we talking about here?
Boy, you really got to drop that on me. Let's see here. Let me mute Go Puppet. There we go. Shall, I guess, is most laws or regulations are looking prospectively to the future. So I would imagine that that's why I use the shall language. So when it arises, you have to do this. Must is also appropriate, but I guess in the legal genre, it's shall. That's the appropriate term. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, just like the Supreme Court is shall start up the first Monday of October. Same idea. What I was going to say was the reason why this is here at all in the first place is because if anybody has a Freedom of Information Act or any of our local versions of that, basically, they have to have all the information and everything using the Studio City website, whatever it is. All that information can now be dumped into, and it makes it easier to comply with the different Freedom of Information Act and all the equivalent acts for the city. So I think that's really what's behind this whole thing. Not that we want that to happen, but that's what's going to happen. They want to, if they would make it very easy for the city to comply with any request for information by just saying, okay, everything that came out of SCNC is now open game. And some people like that. Some people, I would guess, don't like that. That's it.
Thank you for that, Richard. Yeah, I'll just say it kind of makes sense to have all your work emails with work, your personal with your personal, your neighborhood council emails with your neighborhood council email. It just makes it easier for PRA requests, as Richard alluded to. And it just makes common sense. You want to protect yourself as well, board members and committee members, from mixing your personal with the neighborhood council business stuff. So I think it makes common sense. I think we should all have standardized emails. I believe we all do, except for perhaps one board member. But anyway, let's go ahead and vote on this then. Richard, go ahead.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it passes. Thank you. All right, let's move on to number 7 on the agenda. Discussion and possible motion regarding Article 1, Section 4 of the SCNC operating procedures pertaining to board member absences. Let me share the screen again. Okay, 1 second. Move this. There we go. All right, I made a few notes here. The board member absence issue is addressed in the bylaws. And basically the particular bylaw says a board member may be removed from the board upon unexcused absences as outlined in the operating procedures. So what the bylaws basically say is look to the operating procedures to determine what an unexcused absence is. So, my thought was the notion of what is excused and unexcused is rather arbitrary and really could constitute anything. One of the problems is staying work late, does that constitute an excused absence? Does going on vacation constitute an excused absence? Does senior kids piano recital constitute an excused absence? So there's a lot of discretion involved, and I would think that we just need to focus on whether or not there was an actual absence. With the distinction between excused and unexcused is too arbitrary. So here's a draft motion. The board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves amending Article 1 Governing Board, Section 4, absences as follows. Section 4, absences. Paragraph A board member who incurs, and I've crossed out, you'll see on the on the draft. I have it highlighted in yellow and I have it stricken as well. A board member who incurs an absence at 2 regularly scheduled consecutive board meetings, or optionally 3 total board meetings during any 12-month period, may be removed by action of the board. Paragraph B, a board member may be removed from the board upon 2 absences during any 12-month period from regularly scheduled committee meetings by action of the board. C, all regular board and standing committee meetings scheduled and noticed as per the Brown Act shall constitute a meeting for the purposes of determining board member attendance. D, attendance shall be recorded in all meeting minutes. And then paragraph E, I've stricken that. The sentence was the chair of the meeting shall determine if an absence is excused or unexcused. And that is the draft motion. So let me stop sharing. There we go. And let's get some public comment on this. Go Puppet, go ahead.
You have to second it first.
Oh, I always do that. Do I have a second on this?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon.
I'll second.
Scott Mandel seconds. Go ahead, Go Puppet.
Yes. So, it says you may. And by the way, I want to thank the lawyer on the board for creating an attorney-client privilege relationship, yes, with the board. It's always good when you do that and cause yourself those type of nightmares. Yes. Congratulations. And it's subject to CPRA review now, too. So as you see, no matter what you do here, mistakes are always made. And it says may remove. Why not make it mandatory, humans? You miss 2, bye-bye. You miss 3, you get the horns. No excuses, no discretion. And that way, then everybody knows it's a fair playing, even playing field, right? Because if you let some people get away with shit and others not get away with shit, then you have the late Richard Adams issue. And of course, he slept in the shower before we could get the answer before the Supreme Court.
That's time.
Thank you, Go Puppet. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you need to keep unexcused in all the places it is, because you could have a board member who has an excuse, a medical excuse for not attending. And I think you want to penalize the unexcused, but somebody that has an excuse, they could miss 3 meetings and they shouldn't be thrown off the board automatically. And remember, Zoom is not going to be with us forever. So they could have a medical reason for not attending a meeting just because they can't physically be there. So I don't think this is a good idea.
Thank you, Barry. Brandon, go ahead.
Can you screen share that again, please, if you can? I saw something that looks like
Right, and sure, 1 second.
yeah.
Oh, one thing I didn't allude to.
No, A and
Go ahead, Brandon.
go back to the A and B. Back what we were talking about.
Okay.
Okay. A, it says, or optionally 3 total board meetings during any 12-month period. B is upon 2 absences during any 12-month period. So what is it, 3 or 2? Because I can't choose between A and B. One says 3, one says 2. Am I reading this incorrectly? If I miss 2, then you say, oh, you're in violation of B. I'll say, no, what A says up to 3 over the course of the 12-month period.
I think up to 3 implies maybe a special board meeting is thrown in there.
No, it says 3 total board meetings. It doesn't say.
Right, but it says 2 regularly scheduled. You could have, let's say, 2 regularly scheduled board
consecutive
meetings.
Board meetings. 3 total board meetings. That includes the special meetings as well.
I would infer that, yeah.
I don't think we should infer it. I think it should be amended and placed in there so it's very clear. as to we're talking about all board meetings or both special and regular board meetings. I think that I'm not going to assume that every board member on our neighborhood council has a 3-digit IQ level. So I'm just going to suggest that you add special and regular board meetings instead of 3 total special and regular board meetings. I think that would clarify it nicely.
Thank you for that. Richard, go ahead.
I have a problem with that last suggestion because you can come up on a special board meeting without any notice at all. Maybe it should be the ones that are locked in concrete. Not this particular committee, obviously, which meets very irregularly as does budget, but the ones that have regular meeting times, maybe those should be the ones and not special meetings. You know, particularly some of the special meetings, there's not too much, a lot of education is there, but not too much voting is involved. So I'm a little concerned with having one which is not a regular published meeting that you know about a year ahead of time.
Thank you, Richard. Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. I think Richard makes a good point between regularly scheduled and special. And I don't think there's a problem with the 2 consecutives or 3 totals. Because, I mean, 2 consecutives, I mean, if you think about last year, July, September, and December were canceled. So we only had a few board meetings anyway last year. So if you're missing that many and we're canceling so many, I just think when we sign up, we know we have a regularly scheduled board meeting once a month. Maybe what you might want to strike out is the reference to the committee meetings. I don't understand why it's in there. But like on B, because it says 12-month period from regularly scheduled committee meetings by action of the board. That's what confuses me. And C as well, board and standing committee. But I completely agree with the excused and unexcused, because if you're the chair, you decide what's excused. So, I mean, last year, I believe it was last year. No, I'm sorry, I think it was the year before. We had a person who had an excuse. I wasn't on the board, but they missed quite a few meetings. And all you do is say in advance, I can't make it, and that's considered excused. And we all know Dunn frowns upon that in their recommendations for the absences. And also, it's really supposed to be in the bylaws. So when this was all done back in the old bylaws and procedures committee, they, rather than amend the bylaws, which maybe they couldn't have gotten the board to approve or done to approve, they just did all the rules and regulations and the operating procedures, which is why it's such a complete mess. That's all I have to say now. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Richard.
I'm wondering, is the deletion or not inclusion of ad hoc meetings supposed to be that there for a reason? And what about the required stuff that Dunn may have? Does that count also?
Good questions. I'm not sure in terms of how that would be handled. All right, then. So let me actually scroll down. I didn't go over this previously, but I've given 2 examples. One is Encino's neighborhood council provisions on absences, and they actually have it in their bylaws, and they refer to 4 total regularly scheduled board meetings as being the threshold, and they will automatically be removed. So there's no discretion there. There's no may be removed. And if you go down to the Greater Toluca Lake Neighborhood Council's bylaws, it's 3 consecutive regular board meetings will be automatically considered for removal by the board. So there's some, they're not automatically removed, they're considered for removal. So those are two different local boards, which deal with the absence rule in their bylaws. And that's Scott made a good point, because we have kind of a general rule which says, refer to the operating procedures, and then we have this mess. So my take on this is, I don't know that 2 regularly scheduled consecutive board meetings, if it seems like it should be more than that to constitute something that would result in the removal from the board. That's what, the Encino lets someone have 4 absences, and Greater Toluca Lakes 3, we have 2. I think we need to get away from the unexcused, excused sort of language, but maybe increase the number of board meetings that would be required in order to consider removal by someone. That was my thought. Let's go back to public comment. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I would think that if it was only 2 regularly scheduled consecutive board meetings, or 3 over a 12-month period, if it comes to the board, I would think the more reasonable outcome might be a censure of the board member. From what I understand, before removal, usually it's censure first, and then if it continues, you remove the board member. So increasing the number is probably a good idea, because if they've only missed 2 consecutive or 3 over the course of 11 months, I think the board is more likely to censure them than remove them.
Thank you. Rick, let's go to Go Puppet. Go ahead, Go Puppet. Go Puppet, you gotta unmute. There you go.
Go ahead, wherever you are. Yes. So I've thought about this. I've had a kind of a heart-to-heart. Oh, no. Yes. So I've decided that if you miss 2 meetings in a row, I think it should only be a $1,000 fine. If you miss 4 meetings in a 12-year period, I believe probation and a $2,000 fine. Let's make monetary punishment mandatory on this item. I don't think anybody's going to miss any meetings then, if it comes out of your pocket. Absolutely brilliant idea. Yes, that's right. Goat Puppet, providing your solutions for you. Yes. And all the fines, of course, payable to Goat Puppet, naturally, for his farm. A 501(c)(3) penny.
Thank you for that, Go Puppet. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, in that we have 15 members of neighborhood council and there's 15 members of city council. Why can't we adopt or merge or something to do with their rules? Because they don't get kicked out even if they have a lot of absences. I'm just wondering basically, what's fair for the goose is fair for the gander.
Thank you. I guess my response to that would be, then what if someone misses 90% of their meetings? They're not contributing to the neighborhood council. Something has to be done about that. So I don't know. I think maybe putting in 3 regularly scheduled board meetings rather than consecutive board meetings during any 12-month period may be removed by action of the board. I think that's probably reasonable language. And that way they're not automatically removed, but they may be removed given censure, that sort of thing. So I'm going to propose a friendly amendment to read a board member who incurs an absence at 3 regularly scheduled board meetings during any 12-month period may be removed by action of the board. So, Scott, do I need a second for that? Or is it's a friendly amendment by me, so it wouldn't require that, would it?
If you amended it before you brought it forward, no, but it's already forward. So it's my understanding we go through the amendment.
All right, then. Do I have a second for that?
Yes,
We have a second. So let's go ahead and we would have to open it up for public comment again, Scott.
Yes.
Public comment? Seeing none. Board comment? Seeing none. Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, I guess just raise your hand.
Yes. I think 3 is fair for May. Yes.
Unanimous. Thank you for that. As to paragraph B, I don't know that we need to deal with committee meetings in terms of removal. I know each board member has to join a committee and participate. But I think attending a committee meeting is a little bit different from attending a board meeting. So I'd like to get more discussion on that. Does anyone have any further discussion on this? Go ahead, Brandon.
I think this one is actually even more important than the first one, because in a committee as small as this, one absence means you don't have a quorum and you don't bring these motions to the board. With 15 members of the board, we cannot have maybe 2 or 3 board members and still have enough to vote. When the smaller committees like public safety, well, maybe not so much now, but back then it was not a lot of people. With committees of maybe 4 or 5 people, they must be there, or you lose the opportunity to carry your motions to the board. So I think this should stand.
Barry, go ahead.
Yes, I think you should change the may to shall. Thanks.
Thank you, Barry. Any board comment on paragraph B?
Board member may be removed from the board upon 2.
Go ahead, Scott.
From the regular. So a board member who happens to be on a committee, at least one, who misses 2 committee meetings, gets removed from the committee or from the board? Well, we can't remove them from the committee because then that has to go for a board vote. Any board member on a committee, wouldn't the remedy be removing the person from the committee then, and not from the board? Because then they're being irresponsible on the committee. If they're still attending the board meetings, they still stay on the board. So I don't know. I think that just falls under the committee behaviors. Same thing if committee members who aren't board members, if they don't show up to the committees, they just get removed the way they were appointed. If the chair appointed the committee member who's not showing up, the chair gets rid of them. If the president does it, the president gets rid of them, unless it's a board member, and then the board gets rid of the board member off the committee. Do you follow where I'm going?
Yes, I do. It's a little bit of a mess, I have to say. this paragraph. Go ahead, Brandon.
Keep in mind, there have been instances already where board members did not attend committee meetings for quite some time, 2 or 3 consecutive ones. So we're already not adhering to this rule. Thinking about it, maybe it should be extended to more than just 2. I think it shouldn't be shall, it should be may, because ultimately it's up to the board to decide whether an elected official is removed. From what I understand, only elected officials can be removed by elected officials, regardless. Well, maybe they might be appointed, but I think may is a good word here and not shall, because things change. Maybe we've heard stories about board members not showing up and suddenly the threat of censure looms and they become good boys and girls. So I think may should stay in there, and the option should be available to the board to decide what happens to the board member. And maybe it should be more than just 2. Maybe it should be 3 or 4.
Thank you, Brandon. Go ahead, Go Puppet.
You touched on the Herb West matter. Yes, that's very good. Only board members can remove other members. To put in a little provision there, if any board member happens to be indicted for a felony, state or federal, of course, they should automatically be suspended, but not removed. Hey, I like that. Yes. So the board member will be first interimly suspended, subject to a vote of the board reinstating them within 60 days. Holy shit. That's actually a cogent idea. Yes. Doesn't that sound good? Goat Puppet is rewriting your bylaws. Imagine a farm animal has more sense than you do. I wonder why. Is it because I'm a registered Republican in 7 states? Perhaps. Goat Puppet moves that amendment. Yes. And Scott will certainly second it. And it
Thank you, Go Puppet. Barry, go ahead.
That was a good idea. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'm not so sure this needs to be there at all. If the committee chair can remove a board member from their committee for missing, why does the board have to vote on removing them from the board because of missed committee meetings? I think it should be between the board member and the committee chair. I don't see board action on this. Why board action needs to be taken on this when it's at a committee level?
Thank you, Barry. And I know that there is a change to our operating procedures from last time that dealt with committee and board members. I'm sorry, committee chairs and board members, and removal of those 2 specific people. So perhaps it is, as Barry suggests, kind of unnecessary. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I was wondering because it gets very tight, very close to situation. Every board member is supposed to spend 10 hours doing non-committee stuff. I'm wondering, basically, that doesn't seem to be enforced by anybody.
Right. That's a good point. I can go either way on this thing. It almost makes sense to strike it. And if there is a problem with a board member on the committee, then it should be between the committee chair and the particular board member, and between the board and the particular board member. Go ahead, Go Puppet. I'll let you talk. Go ahead.
Yes. And I notice when I find out who's playing with my virtual hoof, I will definitely put them in my FBI box. Now, as you know, I came up with the solution. an interim suspension. It will automatically take effect, not by the blame of the board, by the rules themselves. And you'll have 60 days to remove the suspension. What if they don't remove the suspension? Oh, that's the best part. It becomes permanent. Yes. And you get thrown off the board. You have to give back your little pass over there at the CBS Bradford back lot. Give away your parking pass and give all your keys back. Yes. Because the goal is to throw all of you defective humans out and put in people like myself, well, an individual like myself and others that care about the community. And if you don't want.
That's time.
Thank you, Mr. Go Puppet. Richard, go ahead.
That was only 58.4 seconds.
It would be nice if we could add ad hoc to C, so it's regular and standing committee as well, and the ad hoc add to that, just so it's consistent.
Thank you, Richard. I think in light of everyone's comments, I'm gonna move to strike paragraph B and paragraph C. I just don't think they're necessary in light of the changes to paragraph A. So do I have a second on that?
Yes, I'll second that. That makes sense.
Okay, let's go ahead and open it for public comment. Go ahead, Go Puppet.
Chickens? Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe I might have seen an alcoholic beverage bottle somewhere on my camera. Hopefully, yes. But you know, you guys are afraid because you're afraid of the ghost of Richard Adams, the way you sacked him for missing stuff. Yes. But you have to take responsibility for the people that don't do their work. Like when Fried Chicken put Lois Wineshaft in there, remember? You kicked out a perfectly non-defective human and put in a defective human who never showed up. Did she ever come to one meeting? Not a goddamn one. Yeah, that's right. So I would like to reinstate Lois Wineshaft anyway and give her 12 meetings to show back up. I think we should do that as an accommodation on this meeting. After all, you guys aren't doing anything anyway. Let's try to bring somebody back that's got a lot of bunny.
And that's time.
Thank you, Go Puppet.
Oh, she's loaded. Yes.
Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I like the idea of striking these. I guess we can't use the words Herb Wesson clause. I don't think Dunn would appreciate that, but oh well. But what I would probably suggest is somewhere in these operating procedures, not today, obviously, but another time, make it more clear to committee chairs that they have to take responsibility for both stakeholders and board members who aren't showing up to committees, that they can't just let it fly. You know, we've had board members, we're not talking about stakeholders here, obviously, we're talking about board members who just don't show up to committee meetings. And these are regular committee meetings, first or second, whatever, of every month. And they know when it is. And if they don't know where it is, they're not good with their time management. They're not putting it on their calendar, which is their problem, not ours. So I think the committee chairs should be reminded by the SCNC president that they are responsible for ensuring that these board members do attend committee meetings regularly, and if not, they should.
And that's time.
Thank you for that, Brandon. Barry, go ahead.
Yes, I thank you, Jeff. I like the changes you've done here, and just to set the record straight, Lois was never actually the chair. She was pegged to do it, but never did an agenda. And somebody was immediately brought in to take over. So just setting the record straight. And I will say for all the committees I've chaired over the years, I've never had the problem of people not showing up. Thanks.
That's not true.
Thank you for that. Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, we also have another thing which is kind of like the head of Dunn, Rachel Beltran, whoever's doing it these days, you know, they also can kick people off a board without a lot of due process. So I'm wondering, should we have as much or more due process as the general manager of the neighborhood council system, who makes a heck of a lot more money than we do?
Thank you for that, Richard. I think that our bylaws and operating procedures concerning board member removal, censure, and whatnot does provide sufficient due process. I'm not so sure about the new Dunn code of conduct. I don't know if that would provide sufficient due process. I'm doubtful about that. But at any rate, let's go ahead and vote on striking paragraphs B and C. All in favor, raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes for me, passes. And then I'm going to collectively lump paragraph D with E, striking E and amending D as stated. Attendance shall be recorded in all meeting minutes. Let's go ahead and open that up to public comment. Go Puppet, go ahead.
Is this a motion?
Sorry, yes, so I need a second. Who's going to second that for me?
second,
Richard's got a second. Thank you, Brandon. I keep missing that for some reason. Go ahead, go Puppet.
Yeah. So this is the first one we don't have a real problem with, do we? It's quite simple. We take attendance, yes. That's right. And we mark who's not here. And we should put an asterisk on unexcused absences. So when you find somebody absent, you will designate it as an excused or an unexcused absence. You should put that in there. Why, you sneaking animal. Yes. Then we'll have a record of what to do next in case there's a lawsuit. That's very good. Yeah, see that? You almost forgot that, humans, didn't you? I didn't forget it. I don't forget anything because I'm an animal with horns.
Thank you for that, Go Puppet. Let's see, any board comment? I'm sorry, committee comment? Oh, go ahead, Brandon, sorry.
This is for all meetings, including committee and board meetings, as well as ad hoc and special meetings, every single meeting.
Attendance shall be recorded in all meeting minutes. Yes. Any board comment, Richard or Scott? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote.
Barry had his hook up.
All in favor, raise your hand.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes. Let's move on to agenda item 8. The next agenda item should move much more quickly. 8 is discussion and possible motion regarding Article 3. There's a typo in the agenda. It says 2, but it should be 3, Section 1 of the SCNC operating procedures pertaining to committee removals, changing may to shall. On the shared screen here, the draft motion is the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves amending Article 3, committees and their duties, Section 1, standing committees, paragraph J6. 6, committee members other than chairs and board members shall be removed in the same manner in which they were appointed. However, chairs and board members shall be removed from a committee by the president only after the president or a board member submits a removal motion to the board and a majority of the board votes for removal. So let's go ahead and do public comment. This was a modification to the operating procedures that was passed back in February. The language previously was may rather than shall. I've highlighted the change to shall. I think that's more in line with the intent of the actual motion. And it prevents a president from just saying, no, I'm not going to remove someone, because there's a discretionary language that says may. So anyway, let's go ahead and move it to
Second.
public. Second, thank you. To public comment. Go ahead, Go Puppet.
Yes, and we shall call this the Randy rule. That's right. Because now our new leaders in the junta want to get rid of that. Yes. No more of that Lois wine shaft for Eric Previn changing. No more until the board says okay. Yes, this is the most important amendment ever in the 34-year history of this neighborhood council. Finally, no more dictator president. Yes, I know Scott thought about being a dictator, but instead he's taken the George Washington approach and decided to have a civilian board run this neighborhood council. Very, very good. He should be commended. He had the power, but he gave it back to the people.
Thank you for that, Mr. Go Puppet. Barry, go ahead. Barry?
Yeah, the first sentence doesn't make any sense because it says they're removed in the same manner they were appointed. But when a chair is appointed, they're appointed by the president. And then in the second sentence, you're saying it's got to have a board approval. So it's not in the same manner, because in the first sentence, there's no board approval required for their initial appointment. So the second sentence doesn't make sense with the first sentence. The two sentences don't jive with each other. I hope you get what I just said.
Thank you, Barry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, the second part, chairs and board members shall be removed from the committee by the president only after the president or a board member submits a removal motion to the board and the majority of the board votes for removal. How do grievance panels and disciplinary panels play into this? Because if the motion is brought to, say, Scott, or Scott decides to do this, and it is brought right before the 72-hour deadline, the Brown Act deadline, to post the board agenda, would the board member have enough time to file a grievance with you, basically? I just think there should be a greater timeline here for the board member to state their case.
Thank you for that. Any board comment? Go ahead, Scott.
So going in reverse order, the way it used to be is the president was able to remove the chair of a committee, regardless of who it was. There was no grievance, there was no time period, you're out. President decides for any reason whatsoever. So it was changed specifically to give some type of due process where if you are a board member on a committee, whether you're the chair or just a board member, at least to be removed from that committee, the board needs to weigh in. So that actually put in the due process and time for the board and actually the board member who's being removed or the committee chair to consider it. Also, getting rid of the may to shall actually came up in real life when a past president actually said, well, you can vote to remove, but it's still up to me because it says may, and it's up to the complete discretion of the president, even after the board votes. So that, again, didn't make any sense to me. I think when the board votes to remove a committee chair or a board member from a committee, say for multiple absences, the president must do it, or it's not up to the president to veto it. So I think this is fine. It keeps the power vested a little bit more in the board for some of these arbitrary removals that I know have occurred in board past. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I'd just like to say we passed this particular provision with the May language back in February. We treated the chairs and board members as kind of special cases and subjected them to, as Scott said, some due process with a vote of the board. And it doesn't make sense that the board would weigh in on whether a person should be removed, and then the president can basically use a veto because of the May language. So what we're doing is actually reflecting the will of the board that actually voted for removal. So the president doesn't get to veto that particular decision by the board. And if it's gone to the board and it's actually gone to a vote, then I think the board needs to be heard very clearly on that. As to the first sentence, I don't see that there's a problem with that. It basically says committee members shall be removed in the same manner in which they were appointed. So if a regular committee member isn't up to the job or keeps missing meetings, then the chair can go ahead and remove that particular person, or the president for that matter. So that's all it does, is apply to the errant committee member. Doesn't apply to a chair, which is a different case. It doesn't apply to a board member. So I guess there is a little bit of a distinction there. Anyway, let's go ahead and go to a vote then. We had a second. I did hear that. So let's go ahead and go to a vote. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Yes.
Yes. The motion passes. Thank you for that. Let's move on to number 9. Discussion and possible motion regarding Article 4, Section 2E of the SCNC operating procedures pertain to the length of agenda items. We see the agenda item here, the draft. The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves amending Article 4, Meetings, Section 2, Agenda, Paragraph E as follows. A general description of an item on the agenda shall be provided. Public comment, let's go ahead.
Second.
Oh, second, there we go again. Go Puppet, go ahead.
What do I do?
Oh, you can speak.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Who's speaking here?
Well, you do it.
Very good. Well, I would just like to say I'm bull. Yes, asshole. Thank you. Yes, I think definitely all agenda items should have a brief description in 20 words or less. Exactly what the fuck it's all about, yes. So that we have transparency in our government. Yes, the city council doesn't do it. How come you have to do it?
Oh, because they're nobodies.
That's right, yes. So unfortunately, rules for you and not for thee. Yes. So I would evidently rule for these, but I would file a protest that you should be able to run your council the same kind of criminality that Nori Martinez does on the council as a form of
That's time.
Thank you, Mr. Go Puppet, for that. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I will actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, agree with whatever I just heard. That was basically the Ralph M. Brown Act. I believe it says 20 words or less. The Ralph M. Brown Act doesn't really say you need a lengthy agenda item description, just a couple of sentences and that's it. But now that we can really use Google Drive here, where there could be a link to maybe a document on Google Drive, which gives a more detailed description of what the committee's talking about, both at the committee level and at the board level, just to keep these agendas down to a reasonable size so Barry doesn't tear his hair out when he's posting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. So you're just taking out the 20 words or less. I'm guessing. So
Yeah,
I think that's a good.
yeah, exactly. It's the former language is a brief general description of an item on the agenda, generally need not exceed 20 words.
And I think the link should be to the actual document, not a Google Doc, because not everyone has access to Google Docs. You know, I don't use it. So it should not be a Google Doc. It should be if it's a planning document, it's a link directly to that document.
Thank you for that. Any board comment? Go ahead, Scott.
Sure, I'll chime in. I think the 20 words is ridiculous, especially because on a lot of our agendas, there are requests for action, and there is nothing we could do in 20 words. Even our motions regarding council files, which then link and reference assembly bills. And what we get from the city council sometimes is so disjointed and poorly worded that it takes us 20 words just to set it up and just to put the title of the actual council file itself. Discussion and possible motion, council files, such and such title. Sometimes the title of the council file will take us past the 20 words. So I think the days of 20 words is over, and I'm glad it's being stricken, because some of us are long-winded when it comes to writing, myself included, and I could never get it down to 20 words. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Scott. I agree. Just to echo what Scott said, some of these requests for actions, it comes to mind last month's regarding the Greenway. That was lengthy, but there has to be a little bit of history and explanation involved in a request for action to our council member. So that well exceeded 20 words. So I just think it's an outdated, archaic, unnecessary verbiage for us to have in our operating procedure. So I think this streamlines it, makes it more clear, and is a much better fit for us. That said, let's go ahead and go to a vote. Raise your hand if you're in favor.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item number 9 passes. Let's move on to 10. Discussion and possible motion regarding Article 4, Section 2 of the SCNC operating procedures pertaining to agendizing matters. Let me scroll down to the agenda item, the proposed motion. Draft motion, the Board of Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves amending Article 4 meetings, Section 2 agenda by adding paragraph F. The president shall place on the board meeting agenda all timely submitted motions, resolutions, and requests for action proposed by 1, board members, or 2, passed by committees, unless an item explicitly violates a bylaw, operating procedure, or done city rule or ordinance. Close quote. That is the proposed motion.
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Go Puppet, go ahead.
Yes, it's right. I'm bully bull here.
How the hell did you get in here?
Never mind. Do not interrupt me. Now, what about motions passed and sponsored by stakeholders? We have such a procedure in the Reseda Neighborhood Council. Only members of the public may introduce a motion and then the board votes whether to put it on the next agenda. I think this would be a very equitable gesture. As you can see, I have been an award-winning speaker with Empower LA with my little badges. The first and only puppet to ever been certified mentally sane by the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. So I would move that we do this so that people can feel less stuck and more engaged in your community.
That's a good point.
Yes, that's why I showed up here for this one. That's right. I so move. Moo. Moo, I move. Moo.
Thank you for that, Go Puppet. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, a question regarding this one. Shall place on the board meeting agenda all timely submitted motions. What if I submit a motion to Scott regarding something that should be on Government Affairs Committee, and Scott says, no, you really should bring that to committee first and run it through the proper protocol. It should be transportation, it should be cultural affairs, it should be this. And I say, no. It doesn't say that he can drop this down to committee. If I submit it to him in a timely manner, I could bypass the committee and go directly to the board. So what's preventing a board member from going right past a committee and bringing a motion directly to Scott that really should go through committee first?
Thank you for that, Brandon. Barry, go ahead.
Yes, it used to say exactly what Brandon just said, and it ought to be changed back because the president, somebody has to be the clearinghouse for a motion if it's too soon to be agendized, just for the reasons that Brandon just listed.
Thank you for that, Barry. Any board comment? Go ahead, Scott.
Sure. We actually have real life situations that have already occurred where a committee chair is frustrated with what's going on in committee, pulls the motion, and then brings it to the board as a board member for a vote. This happens regularly, and the remedy for that is with the board to say, hey, this should have gone back to committee, and the board simply votes no. We've had that many times as well, where motions have been presented that didn't seem ripe or ready or formatted or written. And I don't think the president should be the one to be doing the veto. I think if the board member in the scenario that was brought to us brought something that wasn't proper, it gets on the agenda and the board votes no and says, send it back to the committee. We actually have real life past president saying things like, show me where the president has to place something on an agenda, even if it comes from a committee or from a board that is duly presented. So I think the check and balance against frivolous or motions that are overstepping the bounds of committee are best handled by the board. We bypass the budget committee now regularly because that committee doesn't meet and doesn't present us with what we need. So we have board members bringing motions to the board regularly on this for streamlining purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Go ahead, Richard.
It's all right, I'll wait.
I'm sorry, Richard, go ahead. You were muted there for a moment. You're still muted. There you go. Go ahead.
Just seems to me the easiest way is to put it all on the agenda, and what gets thrown off the agenda, referred to committee. That's the way life is, but it's done publicly. It's not done by the president, it's not done by anybody else. Basically, yes, you can still filter stuff, but I think I'd rather have it on the record that it was referred to a different committee by the president or by a vote or by something or other, so everything's on the record.
I agree with Richard and Scott's comments. Again, a lot of these amendments to our operating procedures and bylaws deal with arbitrariness exhibited by a president. So the president, unfortunately, has a power to not agendize something as it's currently construed, as Scott alluded to. So that's not a good thing. I think if a board member has a motion and it complies with everything that it needs to comply with, it should be placed on the agenda. And again, if it's not ready for prime time, we kick it back down to committee. And, we've seen that with several motions this year. Also, it does say this applies to a motion passed by a committee. It will be terrible if a committee spent all this time and effort to pass a motion after discussion, examination, reports, et cetera, and then the president decides not to agendize it. That would be a shame and a waste of resources and the time of committee members. So I support this. I think it makes sense, and it puts a check on the power of the president, whether it be Scott Mandel or anyone else, to do the right thing here. So I'm going to bring it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. 3 pass unanimously. Let's go on to agenda item 11. Discussion and possible motion regarding Article 4, Section 5F of the SCNC operating procedures regarding joining meeting by phone. So this is one of those rather archaic provisions of our operating procedures. Here's the draft motion. The Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, approves amending Article 4 meetings, Section 5. Special rules for conduct of meetings, paragraph F as follows. Quote, F, a committee chairman may allow for a member to join the meeting via telephone. Period, close quote. So as you can see, we're striking the however, that member shall not count toward quorum nor vote on any motions. That's really inapplicable in the time of Zoom and that sort of thing. So let's go to public comment. Go Puppet, go ahead. Oh, can I get a second for that? Again,
I'll do
thank you, Scott.
Second.
Thank you, Richard.
Second.
Go ahead, Go Puppet.
I did it first.
Okay, I'm sorry I have to do this.
Ow! My nose!
Too much of that tonight.
Ow!
Go ahead.
Ow! Yes. Now, I was going to say, before I got abused here, why don't you allow stakeholders to appear by phone? You could put that in the rule, and that way stakeholders could call in, reach out and touch someone with their cell phone, or even a landline in the case of Richard, who I'm sure is probably the only person in Studio City that has a legitimate landline on copper wire. Yeah. I think that'd be a good idea. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's good.
But let's limit it to 10 people, giving priority to those that have a tail, or maybe a pair of horns, for example, like, I don't know, like somebody I know. So what do you say? Stakeholders appearing by phone after COVID. I think you guys would be on the cutting edge of.
That's time.
Barry Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, I think F should be struck out completely. Whether or not a committee member or a board member can be on the phone and vote or not is going to be determined by Dunn and what they end up doing with Zoom versus not. But I truly believe there's no way we can ever have 99 neighborhood councils doing it phone, Zoom and in person. We just don't have the staff to do it. And Dunn realizes it. But like I said, Dunn is going to determine this. We don't need F at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It should be struck down, but this is really at the discretion of the committee chair. If there is a committee member who is maybe on the road calling via phone, not using their smartphone but actually audio only, the committee chair has to determine whether or not that committee member understands the motion and understands all the details of the motion before they vote. This is a committee level, it's not the board level, so I don't think it'd be too much of a problem. But again, if somebody's calling by phone and they don't have a screen and they're not looking at something, especially if there's something that's a presentation, it places that a committee member at a disadvantage.
Thank you, Brandon. Richard, go ahead. Richard, you're muted.
Yes. Unmute them.
Unmute again. Okay, fine. I'm unmuted. Fine. It seems like we're getting very close to a potential problem when it comes to having phone-in people, stakeholders, or anybody not having to abide with the code of conduct. If everybody had to comply with the code of conduct, whether they be a committee member or they be just a stakeholder, you think like life would be a lot easier, but the code of conduct does not apply to a lot of people. That's one of the problems.
Thank you, Richard. Any other board comment? Scott, go ahead.
I think one of the suggestions to just remove F is probably a good idea. Because I keep reading that one sentence now and I'm scratching my head. Maybe just strike F. No?
Yeah, I after hearing Barry's comment, I'm and yours, I am convinced that we really don't need it. It seems unnecessary. So I'm going to request an amendment to strike F entirely. So let's go ahead and get a second on that.
Second.
Thank you, Richard. Let's go to public comment. Go Puppet, go ahead.
Chickens. How come you will not allow stakeholders, though, to appear by phone? And Richard was correct, as he itches his ear for bugs. As he makes a very good point about the code of conduct and the rules of decorum not applying to farm animals that appear by remote. So therefore, there's no harm in letting me appear via telephone. And that way, I will be able, when we go back live, to attend more meetings and keep up more on the affairs of my various neighborhood council puppet meetings. You want that, don't you?
Oh, I sure do.
That's right. Yes, because the human I'm here with, this asshole's already all over the place. So I've learned how to use a phone, and I'm trying to get a driver's license on my own, by the way, too. So I move for public comment by phone for stakeholders. Be put in the rules.
And that's time.
Second.
Thank you, Go Puppet. Any further public comment or board comment? Seeing none, let's go for a vote. All in favor, raise your hands. Say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye, aye, aye. Pass unanimously. Thank you for that very wise suggestion, Barry. And let me stop sharing the screen since we're done with that sort of thing. We'll move on to agenda item number 12. Discussion regarding potential topics for future meetings. If there are any revisions to the bylaws or operating procedures that you think are necessary, please shoot me an email and let me know, and we'll take a look at it. There are a few more housekeeping items to be done, but that would make this meeting too long. So it's best to tackle this in bits and pieces, and I think we're going to have to revisit the bylaw concerning I believe it was the first agenda item on the excused absences. We need to change the bylaw. So that will probably be the topic of the next bylaws committee meeting to make that revision to the particular bylaw. Let's open it up for public comment. Go Puppet, go ahead.
Yes, I'm wondering what Scott, and I think we should have a public discussion, is what is she going to do with the traitors that we have here? We have Lisa Karjakian and her co-conspirator, Randy Fried Chicken, and whether they're going to be serving on any chairs of committees or what their conflicts of interest are. Yes, because, of course, one of your board members is a land use chair or a committee member on a commission at the same time. And I don't think that's fair. That's too much power in the hands of one puppet, don't you? Definitely. Yes. And of course, Randy has been appearing remotely from various cities and countries. We're wondering if he's really participating, or maybe we should use our new rule and put him on automatic suspension. Yes. Remember, for you, Scott, the spoils go to the winners, and you must assert your control now because they are plotting their move.
And that's time.
Very Machiavelli.
Yes.
Thank you. Barry, go ahead. Barry, you're muted.
And when I look at boards and commissions citywide and I see a particular name and look something up about them, they almost, without exception, are on a neighborhood council already. And in fact, the mayor and council members that appoint people to these boards and commissions look to neighborhood council members because they have more knowledge and they're self-educated because they've been on a neighborhood council, and that's why they are picked to be on boards and commissions. So it is not a conflict of interest. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Barry. Moving on to agenda item 13. No closing comments other than the fact that tomorrow is National Night Out. So I encourage everyone to show up in North Hollywood at the, Brandon, can you tell me the address of the location? I don't have that with me right now.
And I want to look at north.
It's hold on, I have that somewhere. Oh, here it is. It is Whitsett Sports Complex, 6950 Whitsett Avenue. It's basically between Sherman Way and Van Owen. If you're going north on Whitsett, once you pass Van Owen, you look to your right, and there's the parking lot along Whitsett and the picnic area, and that's where it's going to be, around the picnic area.
Great. Well, I hope everyone shows up. I believe it starts at 5 o'clock. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your patience and all your help in drafting our revisions to our operating procedures. I think we've made some very good positive changes to streamline things and make things better for the neighborhood council. That said, I think we will adjourn.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and adjourn at 8:37 p.m. Thank you very much.
Good
Good
night.
evening. Good night.